Tay wiped the sweat from his forehead as he steered his small salvage ship through the dark space between asteroids. He had been working alone for 3 years now, collecting metal scraps and broken ship parts to sell at the trading stations. It wasn't exciting work, but it paid enough to keep him alive. His scanner beeped softly. Something was out there drifting in the empty space. Tay leaned forward and squinted at the green dots on his screen. It looked big, maybe a whole ship. His heart started beating faster. Finding a complete ship meant real money, enough to fix his own aging vessel and maybe even take a vacation. As he got closer, Tay could see it was definitely a ship, but not like any human design he knew. The hull was smooth and curved, almost like it had grown instead of being built. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly in the starlight. The ship was spinning slowly, completely dead in space. Tay put on his spacesuit and grabbed his cutting tools. He had explored dozens of wrecked ships before. Most were empty, picked clean by other salvagers, but something felt different about this one. The design was too alien, too strange. He had never seen anything like it in all his years working the asteroid belt. The airlock took him several minutes to figure out. The controls used symbols instead of numbers, and the mechanism worked backward from human ships. When he finally got inside, emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls. The air was thin but breathable. His suit's sensors showed it was safe to remove his helmet. The corridors were too narrow for a human adult, but Tay was small for his age. He squeezed through passages that curved like the inside of a seashell. Everything felt organic, as if the ship had been grown from some living material. Strange smells filled the air, not unpleasant, just completely foreign. He found the first bodies in what looked like a passenger area. They were humanoid but taller and thinner than humans, with elongated limbs and faces. Their skin had once been pale and smooth, but now it was grey and lifeless. Tay counted at least 20 bodies, men, women, and what looked like children, all dead for weeks, maybe months. This wasn't a warship or a cargo vessel. These people had been travelers, families maybe, carrying personal belongings and wearing simple clothes. Tay felt a chill run down his spine. What had happened here? There were no obvious wounds, no signs of fighting. They looked like they had simply stopped. He was about to leave when he heard it. A soft sound, barely audible, like someone trying not to breathe too loudly. Tay froze and listened carefully. There it was again, coming from deeper in the ship. Following the sound, he found himself in what might have been a storage area. Boxes and containers were scattered everywhere, as if someone had been searching for something. Behind a stack of crates, he saw movement. A small figure was pressed against the wall, trying to hide in the shadows. It was a young girl, maybe 16 or 17 years old. She had the same elongated features as the dead passengers, but her skin still held a faint glow, like moonlight on water. Her clothes were torn and dirty, barely covering her thin frame. She was so skinny that Tay could see her ribs through her pale skin. When she saw him, her eyes went wide with terror. She spoke in a musical language he didn't understand, but her tone was clear. She was begging. Her hands were raised protectively in front of her face, and she was shaking so hard that Tay could hear her teeth chattering. Tay slowly removed his helmet and held up his empty hands. "It's okay," he said softly. "I won't hurt you." He didn't know if she could understand his words, but maybe his tone would calm her. The girl, Neela, though he didn't know her name yet, pressed herself further against the wall. She had been hiding here for who knows how long, surrounded by the bodies of her people slowly starving. The glow in her skin was barely visible now, like a dying flame. Tay's mind raced. He should report this to the colonial authority. Finding a living alien would bring him more money than he could make in 10 years of salvage work. The scientists would pay anything to study her. The military would want to know about her ship's technology. He could retire, buy his own station, never have to risk his life in dangerous salvage operations again. But looking at her terrified face, at how small and helpless she was, Tay knew he couldn't do it. She wasn't cargo or a scientific specimen. She was a scared child who had watched everyone she knew die. She needed help, not a laboratory cage. Humans had always been protectors. Even when it cost them everything, they stood up for those who couldn't protect themselves. It was what made them human. Tai made his choice. Getting Neela back to his ship took almost an hour. She moved slowly, her legs shaking with each step. Tai had to stop several times to let her rest. When they finally reached his small vessel, she stood at the entrance and stared. Her big eyes darted around looking for escape routes. She had learned not to trust closed spaces. Tai's ship was nothing fancy. One main room that served as kitchen, bedroom and workspace. A tiny bathroom, storage areas filled with salvaged parts and tools. But to Neela it probably looked like a prison. She pressed herself against the wall near the door, ready to run if he made any sudden moves. The first thing Tai did was show her the food. He opened his storage compartment slowly, keeping his movements gentle and predictable. Rice, dried vegetables, protein bars, water pouches. Simple human food, but her eyes went wide when she saw it. She hadn't eaten real food in weeks. He prepared a small bowl of rice and vegetables, adding extra water to make it soft. Neela watched every move he made, probably wondering if the food was poisoned or drugged. When he set the bowl on the floor and stepped back, she didn't move for several minutes. Finally, hunger won over fear. She grabbed the bowl with both hands and ate like she thought someone might take it away. Tai had never seen anyone eat so desperately. She finished the bowl in seconds, then looked up at him with surprise. He was still standing across the room, not moving closer. Most people would have tried to grab her while she was distracted. But Tai just smiled and pointed to the food storage. More food. As much as she wanted. Finding clothes for her was harder. Everything Tai owned was too big and too rough for her delicate skin. Finally, he found an old thermal blanket and some elastic cords. With careful cutting and tying, he made something like a simple dress. It wasn't pretty, but it covered her and looked comfortable. Neela took the clothes but didn't put them on while he was watching. Tai understood. He turned his back and busied himself with checking his ship's systems. When he looked again, she was wearing the makeshift dress and seemed a little less scared. The next few days were slow progress. Neela would eat the food he gave her, but she never relaxed. She slept curled up in the corner farthest from his bed, always facing the door. If he moved too quickly, or made unexpected sounds, she would flinch and cover her head with her arms. Tai realized she expected to be hurt. Someone had trained her to fear everything. The way she cringed when he raised his hand, even just to scratch his head. The way she automatically moved to corners and dark spaces. This wasn't just fear of strangers. This was the behavior of someone who had been abused. Teaching her to communicate became his main focus. Tai started with simple pointing. Food, water, sleep, bathroom. He would say the words clearly and point to the objects. Neela was incredibly smart. Within a few days, she was repeating the words back to him with her musical accent. Her voice was beautiful, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Even when she was scared, her words had a singing quality that made Tai want to hear more. Slowly, she began to trust that he wouldn't hurt her for making noise. The breakthrough came when Tai found some drawing materials in his supply box. Old paper and pencils he used for making inventory lists. He started drawing simple pictures to help with language lessons. A stick figure eating, a stick figure sleeping. Basic communication. Neela watched him draw, then carefully took the pencil. Her first drawings were shaky, but they told a story that made Tai's heart break. Pictures of tall, graceful people living in beautiful crystal cities. Then pictures of their sun growing dim and cold. Crowds of people boarding ships, carrying whatever they could save. The next drawings were harder to look at, ships being attacked by vessels with aggressive, angular designs, bodies floating in space, explosions, death. She drew herself hiding, while others around her were taken away or killed. She had survived by being small and quiet and invisible, but the worst drawings came next. Pictures of herself in cages, being examined by different species like she was an animal, being sold and traded and used. The fear in her simple stick figure drawings was more powerful than any words could have been. When she finished drawing, Neela looked up at Tai with tears in her large eyes. She pointed to herself, then to him, then made a questioning gesture with her hands. She was asking what he planned to do with her. Tai set down his own pencil and drew something new, a picture of the two of them sitting together, sharing food. Then another picture of his ship flying through space with both of them inside. Safe, together, free. Neela stared at the drawings for a long time. Then she looked up at his face, searching for lies or hidden meanings. She had been disappointed before, tricked before, hurt by people who pretended to be kind. But something in Tay's expression must have convinced her. For the first time since he found her, she spoke without being spoken to first. "Neela," she said, pointing to herself. Then she pointed to him and raised her eyebrows in question. "Tai," he replied, touching his chest. "My name is Tai." She repeated his name several times, getting the pronunciation right. Then she did something that surprised him completely. She smiled. It was small and uncertain, but it was real. The glow in her skin brightened just a little, like a candle flame growing stronger. From that moment, everything changed between them. The trouble started 3 weeks after Tai rescued Neela. He had made the mistake of buying medical supplies at Gamma Station, a trading post known for loose lips and greedy ears. The station medic, an old drunk named Quan, had noticed Tai purchasing unusual items, antibiotics designed for non-human biology, nutritional supplements for exotic metabolisms, food that no human would ever eat. Quan started asking questions. Tai tried to act normal, claiming he was treating sick animals on his ship. But Quan wasn't stupid. He had seen enough smugglers and traders to recognize the signs. Someone was hiding something valuable, and Quan wanted his cut. Within hours of Tai leaving the station, messages were flying across the underground networks. A salvage operator named Li Tai had something rare aboard his ship, something alive, something that required special care, the kind of cargo that could make a person rich beyond their wildest dreams. The first sign of trouble came when Tay's ship computer detected 3 vessels following him at long range. They were staying just outside his scanner's maximum range, but they matched his course changes too perfectly to be coincidence. Pirates, most likely. Or worse, professional hunters who specialized in capturing rare specimens. Tay changed course toward the nearest inhabited system, hoping the followers would break off rather than risk a confrontation near patrol ships. Instead, 2 more vessels appeared on his sensors. They were being herded, driven toward empty space where no one would witness what happened next. Neela sensed the danger before Tay told her anything. Her people must have had incredible instincts for survival. She became quiet and watchful, her skin dimming to almost nothing. When she looked at Tay, her eyes held the same terrified expression he had seen when he first found her. "We have to run," Tay explained, showing her the scanner display. "Bad people are following us. They want to take you away." Neela nodded and began gathering her few possessions. She had learned to pack quickly, to be ready to flee at any moment. It broke Tay's heart to see how easily she slipped back into survival mode. The chase lasted for days. Tay pushed his ship harder than he ever had before, jumping from system to system, always staying ahead of their pursuers by the smallest margin. His fuel was running low, his engines were overheating, and still, they kept coming. The hunters weren't just random pirates anymore. Word had spread to the kind of people who collected rare aliens for private zoos or illegal research facilities. Government agents had also joined the hunt, claiming they needed to study Neela for the security of human space. Everyone wanted a piece of her. Tay made contact with old friends from his salvage days, people who operated outside the law and knew how to disappear. Min, a fuel smuggler who worked the Outer Rim. Bok, who ran a hidden repair station in an asteroid field. Jin, who could forge identification papers that would fool any scanner. These weren't good people in the traditional sense. They were criminals, smugglers, and outcasts. But they understood loyalty. When Tay explained that he was protecting someone helpless, they didn't ask questions. They just helped. Min met them at a secret refueling point and topped off their tanks without payment. "Keep the girl safe," she said simply. "Kids don't deserve what those hunters do to them." Bok's repair station was hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid, invisible to most scanners. While his crew worked on Tay's overheated engines, Neela explored the station with wonder. She had never seen humans working together to help someone they barely knew. No money changed hands, no contracts were signed. They were helping because it was the right thing to do. Jin provided them with new identification codes and fake registration papers. He also gave them coordinates to safe houses and hidden routes used by refugees and freedom fighters. The Underground Railroad, he called it, for people running from things they can't fight alone. During their time at these hidden stations, something beautiful happened to Nyla. Surrounded by humans who treated her with basic decency, she began to heal in ways that went beyond her physical health. Her skin grew brighter each day, shifting from dim grey to soft silver, then to a warm, pearlescent glow. She started laughing at Tay's terrible jokes. She would hum strange, beautiful songs while helping him repair equipment. Most importantly, she stopped flinching when he moved suddenly or raised his voice. She trusted him completely now, in a way she had never trusted anyone since losing her family. The change in her was remarkable. When Tay first found her, she had been a broken, terrified child. Now she was becoming herself again, curious, intelligent, and surprisingly brave. She learned to help with ship repairs, her small hands perfect for reaching tight spaces. She memorized star charts and navigation routes. She was becoming his partner, not just his passenger, but their pursuers never gave up. Every few days, new ships would appear on their scanners. The bounty on Neela's head grew larger each week. Government officials offered rewards for information. Criminal organizations put out contracts. Everyone wanted the alien girl, and they were willing to kill anyone who stood in their way. The stress was wearing on both of them. Tay hadn't slept properly in weeks, always watching the sensors for signs of danger. Neela tried to stay strong, but he could see the fear creeping back into her eyes. She had started to hope for a normal life, and now that hope was being threatened again, luck finally ran out at the edge of the Kepler system. 5 ships surrounded them, cutting off every escape route. Professional hunters with military-grade weapons and shields. This wasn't a group they could outrun or hide from. The lead ship's captain sent a message. "Surrender the alien, and we'll let you live. Refuse, and we'll take her from your wreckage." Tay looked at Neela, who was trying hard not to cry. She reached over and took his hand. "I won't let them take you," he promised. But with 5 armed ships against his small salvage vessel, Tay had no idea how he was going to keep that promise. The mining station appeared on their sensors like a gift from heaven. Tay's ship was almost out of fuel, and the 5 hunter vessels were closing in fast. The station was old and mostly abandoned, used only by automated mining drones that stripped minerals from nearby asteroids, but it had docking bays and might offer some protection. "We're going in," Tay told Neela, as he pushed his engines to maximum power. Behind them, the hunter ships were spreading out to surround the station. They knew their prey was trapped now. The station's docking bay doors were rusted and moved slowly, but they opened just wide enough for Tay's ship to squeeze through. As soon as they were inside, he sealed the bay and powered down his engines. They had bought themselves maybe an hour before the hunters cut through the station's outer hull. Neela was studying the station's layout on Tay's scanner display. Her eyes moved quickly across the screen, taking in details that he barely noticed. "This place," she said in her musical voice, "it has old technology, very old." The station was indeed ancient by human standards, built maybe 50 years ago when mining operations in this sector first began. Most of the equipment was outdated, the kind of basic systems that modern ships could easily override or destroy. Outside, they could hear the hunter ships taking positions around the station. The lead captain's voice crackled over the communications. "System, you've got nowhere to run now, salvage rat. Send out the alien girl and we'll make your death quick." Tay grabbed his toolkit and what few weapons he had aboard his ship. A plasma cutter, a couple of stun grenades, and an old projectile pistol that had belonged to his father. Not much against 5 military-grade vessels with professional crews, but as they moved through the station's corridors, Neela began acting strangely. She kept stopping to examine control panels and equipment housings, running her glowing fingers along surfaces that looked completely ordinary to Tay. Her skin was growing brighter, not with health this time, but with excitement. "My people built things like this," she said, pointing to a power distribution hub. "Long ago, before we learned to hide from the galaxy, we helped other species with their technology." Tay looked at the dusty old equipment with new eyes. "You're People helped humans build this? Neela nodded. We gave knowledge to many species, showed them how to make power flow better, how to make computers think faster. But then wars started. Everyone wanted us to make weapons. We said no, so they tried to make us slaves instead. The first explosion shook the station as the hunters began cutting through the outer hull. They had maybe 30 minutes before armed soldiers would be swarming through the corridors. Tay felt panic rising in his chest, but Neela seemed oddly calm. She was kneeling beside a main computer terminal, her hands dancing over controls that should have been completely alien to her, but her fingers moved with confidence, like she was reading a familiar language that humans had forgotten how to understand. "What are you doing?" Tay asked. "Making the station remember," Neela replied. Lights began flickering throughout the corridor as she worked. "Your people built on top of our old designs, but the foundation is still there, still sleeping. I can wake it up." The changes started small. Lights grew brighter and shifted to different colors. Air circulation systems hummed to life, moving with more efficiency than they had in decades. Computer screens displayed information in symbols that looked almost familiar, but not quite human. Then Neela did something that made Ty's jaw drop. She placed both hands flat against the main computer core and closed her eyes. Her skin began glowing so brightly that the entire corridor lit up like daylight. Energy flowed from her body into the station's systems, and suddenly everything changed. The mining station came alive, not just functioning, but actually alive in ways that defied human understanding. The walls began shifting and reconfiguring themselves. Corridors sealed off and new passages opened. Defense systems that had never existed before started emerging, from panels that had seemed decorative. Outside, the hunter ships suddenly found themselves dealing with problems they couldn't explain. Their weapon systems malfunctioned. Their navigation computers displayed impossible readings. Energy fields appeared around the station that their sensors couldn't identify or penetrate. "Impossible," the lead hunter captain growled over the radio. "This is just a mining station. It doesn't have military defenses." But it did now. Neela had awakened sleeping technology that her people had embedded in thousands of structures across the galaxy. Hidden gifts that would only activate when someone with the right knowledge needed them desperately. Beam weapons emerged from the station's surface, but they didn't fire destructive energy. Instead, they created confusion fields that made the hunter ship's computers forget how to coordinate with each other. Some ships found their engines running backward. Others discovered their life support systems had begun playing music instead of recycling air. Tay watched in amazement as his small, human brain tried to process what he was seeing. "Your people really were scientists." "The best in the galaxy," Neela said with pride. "We could have ruled everyone, made weapons that would destroy star systems. But we chose to help instead, to build, not destroy." The hunter ships were in chaos now, but they were still dangerous. Frustrated and confused, they began firing wildly at the station. Most of their shots were deflected by energy shields that shouldn't have existed, but some got through. Explosions echoed through the corridors. That's when Ty's human training kicked in. While Neela controlled the station's exotic defenses, he used his knowledge of human psychology and tactics to predict what the hunters would do next. He guided her defensive systems to the right locations, helped her understand how human military minds worked. Together, they made a perfect team. Her advanced science knowledge combined with his practical fighting experience. She could create miracles, but he knew where those miracles needed to happen. The battle lasted for hours, but eventually the hunter ships had to retreat. Their equipment was too damaged, their crews too confused and demoralized. As they limped away, the lead captain sent one final message. "This isn't over. The bounty on her head will only get bigger." But for now, they were safe. Neela collapsed. From exhaustion, her skin dimming back to its normal, gentle glow, the station's miraculous defenses powered down, leaving behind ordinary mining equipment that looked like it had never been anything special. "How many places like this are there?" Tay asked as he helped her stand. Neela smiled mysteriously. "Everywhere. My people went, we left gifts, hidden in plain sight waiting for the right moment." She looked at him with gratitude and something deeper. Thank you for giving me a chance to remember who my people really were." The recording was Neela's idea. 3 days after their battle at the mining station, while they were hiding in the outer rim to let things cool down, she approached Tay with a determined look in her glowing eyes. "People need to know," she said simply. "About my people. About what's happening to others like me." Tay set up his ship's communication system to record everything. Neela sat in front of the camera, her hands folded in her lap, and told her story. Not in broken words this time, but in clear, fluent human speech that she had learned during their weeks together. She spoke about her people's peaceful nature, their refusal to make weapons, and the genocide that followed. She described the slave markets where survivors were sold like animals, the research facilities where they were dissected while still alive. But she also talked about humans, about one human who had chosen to help instead of profit, about the underground network of smugglers and outcasts who had risked their lives to keep her safe, about the difference between those who saw her as valuable cargo and those who saw her as a person worth protecting. The recording was raw, emotional, and completely honest. When Neela finished speaking, tears were streaming down her face, but her voice never wavered. She looked directly into the camera and said, "This is what your species can be at its best. This is why I choose to trust humans, even after everything that's happened." Tay transmitted the recording to every news network, government official and public forum he could access. Within hours, it had spread across human space like wildfire. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The public reaction was explosive. Protests erupted on every major world. Citizens demanded answers from their governments about illegal alien experimentation programs. Journalists dug up evidence of secret research facilities and slave trading networks that had operated for decades. Religious leaders gave sermons about humanity's moral obligation to protect the innocent. The slave hunters who had pursued them suddenly found themselves the most wanted criminals in human space. Their faces were broadcast on every news channel. Bounty hunters who had been chasing Neela were now being hunted themselves by angry citizens and reformed law enforcement. Government officials scrambled to distance themselves from the illegal programs. Committees were formed, investigations launched, and laws rapidly rewritten. The Alien Rights Act was passed in record time, establishing basic protections for non-human beings within human territory. Neela became the first alien granted full citizenship rights in the Human Colonial Federation. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by billions of beings from dozens of different species. She stood before the Colonial Council, no longer a scared refugee, but a symbol of hope and change. "I accept these rights," she said, in her clear musical voice, "not just for myself, but for all those who have no voice. For the victims who didn't survive, for the refugees still hiding in the dark corners of space, afraid to trust anyone." After the ceremony, reporters asked her what she planned to do with her new freedom. Everyone expected her to return to searching for other survivors of her people, or perhaps to join a research institution to share her advanced knowledge. Instead, she surprised them all. "I'm going back to work with Tay," she announced. "There are others out there who need help. We're going to find them." And that's exactly what they did. Using Tay's knowledge of the salvage trade and Neela's understanding of refugee patterns, they began searching for survivors. Not just her people, but any beings who had been displaced by war, slavery, or persecution. Their first major rescue came 6 months later. A distress signal from an unknown ship in the Vega system led them to a transport vessel carrying families from 3 different species. Pirates had attacked their convoy, and they had been drifting for weeks with failing life support. But this time, Tay and Neela weren't alone. Word of their mission had spread, and volunteers had started joining them. Jin, the forger who had helped them escape, now used his skills to create legitimate identity documents for refugees. Min, the fuel smuggler, had gone legitimate and provided free transport for rescue operations. Bok had converted his hidden repair station into a refugee processing center. The rescue ship that arrived at the Vega system carried supplies from a dozen human worlds. Citizens had donated food, medicine, clothing, and credits to support the relief effort. Former government agents who had once hunted aliens now worked as security escorts, protecting refugee convoys from pirates and slavers. When they boarded the damaged transport, Tay was amazed by what he saw. The survivors weren't cowering in fear like Neela had been. They were hopeful, excited even. Word had spread through the refugee networks that humans could be trusted, that help was available. A young alien child, barely old enough to walk, reached up toward Neela with complete trust. No fear, no hesitation, just the innocent belief that these strangers would keep her safe. "Look how far we've come," Tay said to Neela as she picked up the child. "A year ago you were terrified of me. Now kids are reaching for you with no fear." "That all?" Neela smiled, her skin glowing brighter than he had ever seen it. "It's not about me," she replied. "It's about what humans chose to become when they had the chance." The rescue operation went smoothly. Within hours, the survivors were aboard safe ships heading toward processing centers where they would receive medical care, new identities, and help finding permanent homes. Many would choose to stay in human space, contributing their own skills and knowledge to their new communities. As their small fleet prepared to jump to the next system, Neela received a communication from an unexpected source. It was from a Kalan ship, one of her own people who had survived in hiding for years. They had heard her broadcast and wanted to make contact. "We're not the last ones," she told Tay, her voice filled with wonder. "There are others, dozens of us, maybe hundreds scattered across the galaxy. They're coming out of hiding because they've seen what humans can do." More ships appeared on their scanners as they traveled. Not just refugee vessels now, but official government escort ships, medical frigates, and supply transports. The informal rescue network had grown into something much larger. A galaxy-wide humanitarian effort led by humans, but supported by dozens of species. Standing on the bridge of their ship, watching the growing fleet around them, Tay marveled at how much had changed. He had started as a lonely salvage operator looking for scrap metal. Now he was part of something that was reshaping how different species treated each other. "Your people would be proud," he told Neela. She nodded, watching the stars ahead of them. "Yours too. This is what we always believed was possible. Different species working together, protecting each other. My people planted the seeds of this technology, but humans made it grow into something beautiful." Their next destination was already locked into the navigation computer. Another distress signal, another group of beings who needed help. But now they had the resources, the support, and the hope to make a real difference. Humanity had chosen compassion over profit, protection over exploitation. And that choice was spreading across the galaxy like ripples in a pond, inspiring others to believe that maybe, just maybe, the universe could be a kinder place.